Hey everyone, and welcome back to Western Flavors. Before we get into today's story, let's recap the powerful healing events of Chapter 20. In our last chapter, an innocent question from Lindy made Ty realize that his constant, quiet obsession with the Nathan situation was robbing him of his own life. After a moment of profound reflection in the barn loft, he made a conscious decision to reclaim his own peace. We saw him actively heal himself through a day of hard work, professional purpose, and most importantly, by being truly present with his family. The story ended with Ty and Amy sharing a simple, peaceful moment on the porch, with Ty finally free from the anxious storm that had been raging in his mind. If you're enjoying this story, please take a second to hit that like button and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a chapter. The days that followed Ty's quiet personal breakthrough were some of the most peaceful and genuinely happy that Heartland had seen in years. The change in him was nothing short of miraculous. The haunted, distant man who had been a ghost at his own family's table was gone, replaced by a man who was fully, completely present. He laughed, and the sound was deep and real. He worked, and his movements were sure and purposeful. When he looked at Amy, his eyes were clear, his gaze direct and full of a love that was unburdened by the shadows of his own anxiety. He had successfully evicted Nathan from his mind, and in doing so, he had finally, truly come home. But he knew this perfect peace was built on a fragile foundation. It was real for him, Amy and Lindy, but it was predicated on an unresolved issue, a loose thread that, if left unattended, could unravel everything. The conversation with Nathan still needed to happen. It was no longer a source of torment, an obsessive loop of anxiety. Instead, it was a simple, necessary task, a piece of business that had to be concluded, a final mistake that had to be made right. He chose his moment carefully. It was a few days after their weekend in the garden. He and Amy were sitting on the porch, swing in the late afternoon, watching Lindy play with her pony, Sugarfoot, in the nearby paddock. The scene was idyllic, a perfect portrait of the life he was now determined to protect. It was the very perfection of the moment that gave him the strength to do what needed to be done. He could not allow this beautiful, real life to be tainted by a secret, however well-intentioned. He turned to her, his expression serious but calm.
Amy, there's something I have to do today.
Okay. What is it?
I need to go see Nathan.
The name dropped into the peaceful afternoon air, and Amy tensed slightly. It was a name that had been a source of so much pain and confusion, a symbol of the wall that had been between them.
Oh, okay. Is everything all right?
Her voice was cautious, her mind likely flashing back to all the other times Nathan's name had been a trigger for Ty's anger or withdrawal.
It will be. When I first came back, when my head was a mess, I made a mistake, a bad one, and it involves him. It was my mistake, not yours, not his, and I need to be the one to fix it, for us, so we can truly move forward, with no more ghosts, no more secrets.
He wasn't angry, he wasn't jealous, he was a man taking responsibility. It was the most attractive, most reassuring thing she had ever seen. The man she had just spent days reconnecting with was not a fragile boy she needed to protect, but a strong, honorable man she could trust completely.
Okay, Ty.
She said, her voice full of a quiet, unwavering confidence in him.
Do what you need to do.
He brought her hand to his lips and gave it a gentle kiss, a silent thank you for her trust. He stood up, his purpose clear. He walked to his truck, not with the heavy burdened steps of a man heading into a fight, but with the steady, determined stride of a man who was finally, truly, cleaning the slate. Amy was left on the porch, not with a heart full of anxiety, but with a quiet, profound confidence in her husband and in their future. Ty had suggested they meet at a neutral, quiet place, a public fishing access point along the banks of the Bow River, a few miles outside of Hudson. It was a place devoid of personal history for either of them, a blank slate where they could have the difficult conversation that was long overdue. The afternoon was warm, and the brilliant Alberta sun glinted off the fast-moving turquoise water. The only sounds were the rush of the river and the rustle of leaves in the tall cottonwood trees that lined the bank. It was a peaceful setting for what Ty knew would be one of the most difficult conversations of his life. He arrived first, his hands shoved deep in the pockets of his jeans as he stood by the water's edge, watching the current swirl around the smooth gray stones. He felt a profound sense of calm, a quiet resolve that had been absent for weeks. His mind was clear, he knew what he had to say, and he was ready to face the consequences of his own foolish, painful mistakes. A few minutes later, Nathan's truck pulled into the small gravel parking lot. He got out, his movements cautious, his expression wary. He had agreed to this meeting with a deep sense of trepidation, having no idea what to expect. The last time he had seen Ty, the man had been a volatile mix of drunken sorrow and misplaced generosity. Today, the man who stood waiting for him by the river was different. He was sober, his gaze was steady, and he carried himself with a new, quiet strength. Nathan walked over, stopping a respectful few feet away.
Ty.
Nathan, thanks for coming.
The initial greeting was formal, the air between them thick with unspoken history. Ty didn't waste time with small talk. He had come here with a purpose, and that purpose was to clean his own slate. He turned to face Nathan directly, his eyes holding a sincere, humbling honesty.
I owe you an apology. A big one.
Nathan was taken aback, his prepared defenses momentarily rendered useless.
The other night, at the restaurant, my behavior was unacceptable. I was drunk, and I was in a lot of pain. But that's not an excuse. I put you in an impossible, unfair position, and I am truly, deeply sorry for that.
The apology was so direct, so devoid of justification, that it immediately disarmed Nathan. He could see the genuine regret in Ty's eyes.
You don't have to apologize, Ty. I get it. You've been through hell. Anyone would be.
No.
Ty interrupted, his voice firm, but not angry.
I do. I have to. Because it wasn't just about the drinking. It was about what I said.
He took a deep breath, the shame of his misguided decision washing over him again.
I came back after 4 years, and I looked at my life, at Amy's life, and I made a whole set of assumptions. I saw how much she had changed, how strong she was. I saw how happy and comfortable Lindy was with you. And I came to this conclusion in my own head, that I didn't fit anymore. That my being here was just causing everyone pain.
He looked out at the river, his voice a low, pained murmur.
I convinced myself that the most loving thing I could do for Amy was to get out of her way, so when we had that dinner, I wasn't trying to fight you. I was trying to surrender. I was trying to give you my blessing to be with her. It was the stupidest, most arrogant and most cowardly decision of my life.
He finally turned back to face Nathan, his expression one of raw, humbling clarity.
And I was wrong. Completely and utterly wrong. My life is with Amy. It always has been. And I'm going to spend the rest of my days, however many I have left, fighting to be the man she and my daughter deserve. So whatever I said to you that night, the offer, the blessing, all of it, I am taking it all back.
The words, a full and total retraction of his previous declaration, settled between them in the quiet air. Nathan listened to the entire confession, his own complex emotions shifting from wariness to surprise, to a deep, profound, and slightly melancholy understanding. He saw the truth of Ty's journey, the agonizing, circular logic of a man so broken by trauma that he had almost destroyed his own happiness out of a misguided sense of love.
I'm glad, Ty.
He said finally, his voice full of a genuine sincerity that surprised even himself.
For what it's worth, that's all I ever wanted for her to be happy. When you were gone, she was so lost, and I was just a friend, someone to talk to. That's all it ever was, on my end. A man trying to help a friend who was grieving.
He gave a small, sad smile.
I will admit, I care about her. Deeply. You'd have to be a fool not to. And maybe if you hadn't come back down the road, maybe it could have become something else. But you did come back. That changes everything. Her heart has always been yours, Ty. Anyone can see that.
His words were a gift, a final, selfless act of friendship that lifted the last of the weight from Ty's shoulders. Nathan was not his rival. He was a good man who had been caught in an impossible situation, a situation Ty himself had created.
You have my word. I'll stay out of the way. I'll always be her friend if she needs one. But that's it. You two deserve to find your way back to each other.
The tension that had existed between them since the moment they first met in Maggie's diner finally, completely, dissolved, replaced by a quiet, mutual, and slightly sorrowful respect. The rivalry was over. Ty felt a surge of profound gratitude. He extended his hand.
Thank you, Nathan. For everything. For being her friend when I couldn't be.
They parted ways a few minutes later, their conversation complete. Ty watched as Nathan's truck drove off, a cloud of dust in its wake, before getting into his own. He sat there for a long moment, his hands resting on the steering wheel, a massive weight lifted from his soul. He had faced his mistake. He had taken responsibility. He had, finally, unrung the bell. He felt humbled, but he also felt strong. He felt clean, and for the first time, he felt truly ready. He started the truck and turned it back towards home, a new, clear purpose in his heart. Now he could finally go to Amy and tell her the whole messy, painful, and beautiful truth. The drive back to Heartland was a journey of profound and quiet transformation. The familiar Alberta landscape, which on so many other drives had been a painful backdrop to his own internal turmoil, now seemed vibrant and full of promise. The late afternoon sun slanted across the golden fields, and the rolling foothills seemed to welcome him home in a way they hadn't before. The massive, soul-crushing weight of his secret, the one he had been carrying for weeks, had been lifted. He had faced his mistake, he had been honest, and he had been met not with anger, but with grace and understanding. He felt humbled, but he also felt lighter, cleaner, and more himself than he had at any point since his return. He knew there was one last conversation to be had, one final, necessary act of vulnerability. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid of it. He was ready. He was ready to give Amy the one thing she deserved, more than anything else, the whole messy, painful, and complete truth. He found her where he knew she would be, in the barn. She was in Spartan's stall, methodically brushing the old horse's gleaming coat, her movements a familiar, soothing rhythm. She looked up as he entered, and a small, anxious question flickered in her eyes. She didn't know what had happened at the river, only that he had gone to confront a situation that was a source of deep pain for them both. He didn't say anything at first. He just walked over, his boots quiet on the hay-strewn floor, and took the brush from her hand. He began to groom Spartan himself, his movements strong and sure, falling into the easy, comfortable silence beside her. She waited, her patience a testament to the new trust they had built, giving him the space to find his words. After a long moment, he stopped, resting his forehead against Spartan's warm, solid neck. He took a deep breath.
Amy, we need to talk, and I need you to just listen, please, until I'm finished. There are things you need to know, things I should have told you a long time ago.
She saw the raw, vulnerable seriousness on his face and simply nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and hope. They moved from the stall to the main aisle, sitting on a sturdy wooden bench that had been there for as long as either of them could remember. The barn was quiet, the air filled with the scent of horse and leather, the last of the afternoon sun slanting through the high windows in golden, dusty shafts. He began to speak, his voice low and steady, his gaze fixed on his own hands as he recounted the story of his own foolish, broken heart. He started with the night he had lain awake in the spare room, the night he had come to the devastating and completely wrong conclusion that she had moved on.
I was a ghost, Amy. I felt like a ghost, and I looked at the beautiful, strong life you had built in the 4 years I was gone, and I saw Nathan as a part of that, a good, stable part. I saw how happy Lindy was with him, and I convinced myself that my coming back was a mistake, that I was just a painful memory that was going to ruin the peace you had found.
He told her everything about that long, dark night of the soul, laying his flawed logic bare. Then he moved to the part that made a deep, burning shame rise in his cheeks.
So I had dinner with him, and I was a mess. I was drunk before I even got there, and I said some things I am so ashamed of now. I was cruel. I was trying to hurt him because I was hurting. And then, I told him I was letting you go. I told him you were his. I gave him my blessing to be with you, to be a father to our daughter.
He finally looked at her, his eyes shining with a deep, profound regret.
Oh, Ty.
Her voice was a shattered whisper, her hand flying to her mouth. She was looking at him with an expression of such stunned, heartbreaking empathy that it gave him the strength to continue.
And then Tim came home. And he told me I was a coward. He yelled at me, told me I was throwing away a miracle, that I was making the same mistake he had, and it shook me. Then the Mustang, the rescue, and you, Amy, you, sleeping in that chair in the clinic all night just to be near me. All of it. It was like I was slowly waking up from a long, terrible nightmare. I started to see how wrong I was.
He took her hand, his grip tight, desperate.
And today, I went to see him. By the river. I took it all back. I apologized. And I told him that I was going to spend the rest of my life fighting for my family. For you.
He finished, the whole tangled, messy, painful story finally out in the open. He was completely exposed, his heart, his fears, his terrible mistakes all laid bare before her. He had done what Jack had told him to do. He had been honest, and now he just sat there, his soul stripped bare, waiting for her verdict. Amy was silent for a long time, her mind reeling as she tried to process the sheer scale of what he had just told her. All the weeks of his coldness, his distance, his strange, sad, polite behavior, it all suddenly clicked into place. It hadn't been a rejection of her, it had been a tragic, misguided act of what he thought was love. He hadn't been pushing her away, he had been trying to set her free. The pain he must have been in, the profound loneliness of the decision he had made, it was almost more than she could bear to imagine. Her own anger, her own confusion, it all melted away, replaced by a wave of the most powerful, overwhelming, and fiercely protective love she had ever felt.
Oh, Ty.
She said again, her voice thick with unshed tears. She moved closer, her other hand coming up to gently cup his cheek, her touch a silent absolution.
You idiot.
The words were spoken with a deep, profound tenderness.
You beautiful, heartbreaking idiot.
She looked deep into his eyes, her own gaze steady and full of an unwavering certainty.
Did you really think, after everything we've been through, after 4 years of waiting for a miracle, that I would ever want anyone but you?
He didn't need to answer. She didn't need him to. The truth was there, in her touch, in her eyes, in the very air between them. She leaned in, and the kiss they shared was not one of fiery passion, but of a deep, soulful relief. It was a kiss of forgiveness, of understanding, and of a new beginning built not on a fragile, hopeful fantasy, but on the solid, unshakable bedrock of the truth. She pulled back, resting her forehead against his. All the secrets were gone. All the ghosts had been banished. There was nothing left between them but the simple, profound reality of their love.
You didn't have to carry all of that alone.
I know that now.
The silence that followed Ty's confession in the barn was the most profound and peaceful quiet Amy had ever known. It was a silence filled not with the absence of words, but with the presence of a complete and total understanding. She held him, her arms wrapped tightly around his shoulders, and felt the last of the tension, the last of the deep, guarded sorrow he had been carrying for weeks, finally release in a long, shuddering sigh. All the secrets, all the misunderstandings, all the tragic, misguided logic, it was all out in the open, and in the light of the truth, it began to lose its power. She pulled back, her hand still framing his face, and looked at him. The man she saw was not the hollowed-out ghost who had returned, nor the angry, jealous stranger from the diner, nor the sad, polite roommate of the past few weeks. The man she saw now was her Ty. He was scarred, he was weary, and he was more beautiful and more loved than he had ever been.
We could have just talked, you know.
She said, her voice a soft, teasing murmur, though her eyes were still shining with tears.
You could have saved yourself a whole lot of drama.
A real, genuine, and slightly abashed smile finally broke across his face.
Yeah. Well, when have I ever done things the easy way?
They stayed there for a long time talking. She asked him questions and he answered them, filling in the last of the painful secret details. It wasn't an interrogation, it was a quiet, intimate debriefing after a long and brutal war. With every word he spoke, she felt him coming back to her, piece by painful piece. Finally, as the last of the afternoon sun slanted through the high barn windows, casting long golden shafts of light across the hay-strewn floor, he stood up and pulled her to her feet.
Come on, let's go for a walk.
They left the barn hand in hand, the world outside seeming brighter, the colors more vibrant than they had just an hour before. They walked through the familiar Heartland property, their footsteps falling into an easy, synchronized rhythm. It wasn't a walk with a destination, it was a quiet, celebratory procession through their own reclaimed territory. They walked past the paddock where he had first seen Lindy run to Nathan, a memory that no longer held the power to wound him. They walked towards the clearing on the hill where they had once planned to build their house, a place that no longer felt like a monument to a lost future, but a space of quiet, open possibility. As they stood there, looking out at the vast, beautiful expanse of the Alberta foothills, Amy leaned her head on his shoulder.
It feels simple again, like all the noise has finally stopped.
It always was simple, I think.
He replied, his arm tightening around her.
I was the one making it complicated. I was so busy fighting the ghosts of the past, I couldn't see the beautiful real life that was right in front of me.
They started the walk back to the house as the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant strokes of orange and pink. The weight that had been lifted from both of their souls was a tangible thing, a lightness in their steps, an ease in their silence. The family dinner that night was a quiet, joyous celebration. Jack and Lisa, who had been watching the delicate, tense dance between Ty and Amy for weeks, saw the change immediately. The profound, heartbreaking distance was gone. It was replaced by 1,000 small, intimate gestures, a shared glance across the table, a hand resting on a knee, a quiet, private smile. They weren't just coexisting anymore, they were a couple again. Lindy, a sensitive barometer to the emotional weather of the house, was radiant. She chattered happily, her stories and questions directed at both her parents, her small, happy presence a bridge of pure love connecting them. "Daddy, can you teach me to build a kite tomorrow, like you did before? A real one, with sticks and paper?"
You bet, Bug. First thing in the morning. We'll build the best kite anyone in Alberta has ever seen.
He looked across the table at Amy, a look of pure, unadulterated love and happiness in his eyes, and she smiled back, her own heart so full it felt like it might overflow. Later that night, after Lindy was tucked into bed, Ty and Amy found themselves on the front porch swing, a place that held so much of their history. The night was cool and clear, the sky a vast, black velvet canvas spangled with a million brilliant stars. The storm had passed, both outside and in. They sat in a comfortable, profound silence, their shoulders touching, watching the moon rise over the distant, dark silhouette of the mountains. There were still hard conversations to be had, years of lost time to navigate, and a whole future to rebuild. But for the first time, none of it felt daunting. It just felt possible.
You know,
She said softly, her voice a gentle murmur in the quiet darkness.
you didn't have to carry all of that alone.
I know that now.
He replied, his voice full of a quiet, humble gratitude. He turned to her, his hand gently cupping her cheek.
No more secrets, Amy. No more misunderstandings. Whatever happens from now on, we face it together, I promise.
Together.
He kissed her then, a long, slow, and deeply peaceful kiss. It wasn't the desperate, passionate kiss of a reunion or the sad, tender kiss of a goodbye. It was the quiet, solid, and unbreakable kiss of a husband and wife who had been to hell and back and had finally truly found their way home. The slate was clean, the ghosts were gone, and the future, like the vast, starry sky above them, was full of infinite possibility.